Hi, and welcome to the next tour with
Ian.
and Andia. This is episode 1, where we are going to interview each other to talk about our military transition. Well, more specifically, Ian's military that I was just along for the ride for.
Journey.
So, yeah, that's right. Okay, so I'm going to start by interviewing Ian. Well, I think we'll go back and forth. So I'll ask you a few questions, and you can start with me. So
Sounds like
let's start with your name, length of service, and your branch of service and rank when you left the military.
wow, that's a lot. So
Okay.
my name is Ian. I retired out of the U.S. Air Force after a little more than 23 years. I retired as a colonel and had a really amazing career. Really loved it. So as you mentioned, you just kind of followed along on that journey. Let's ask you your questions.
Okay.
So what is your name? How long have we been married? And did you ever serve in the military?
So my name is Andia, which you already know because I already told you. We've been married for 25 years, together for 27. And I did not serve in the military at all. Actually, it was never even crossed my mind. I was never really part of the military family, so wasn't something that I ever even considered. Actually, this might be a really good opportunity to tell our very first date joke, our first date story, which has become a joke because it is kind of funny. Yes. So do you want to?
So let's set the stage here, right? All right. So you mentioned we've been together for a little over 27 years. So if you rewind to that fateful night, went on that first date, we were doing a little of this, right? Getting to know each other, asking questions. You asked me what I wanted to do. And, I kind of told you I wanted to be G.I. Joe when I grew up, but, really serve in the military. And what did you say to that?
I said, wait, so if you get married, your spouse will just follow you around wherever you go for your military service?
To which I said, yep.
And I said, wow, well, I really hope you don't think I'm going to marry you because, no. And you said,
challenge accepted. Fast forward, it's been an incredible career and an even better marriage. So, it can happen. And it's pretty neat to be able to live this next chapter, with you and get to go. Okay, so.
Totally agree. All right, my turn to ask you more questions.
Next up.
All right, what was your date of transition?
January 1st, 2024, I became a civilian. So chapter whatever, the next chapter, the next tour.
The next tour. Okay, what was your final job in the military?
So my final job, I worked for the Air Force Inspector General as the Director of Complaints Resolution, affectionately known as the hate mail shop, right? So it was a great opportunity to really help airmen, guardians, civilians, and their families, resolve challenges and grievances that they had with our Air Force. We aren't the greatest Air Force in the world because we dismiss problems. We face them head on. So that was a really interesting way to finish up my career.
Yeah, I think what was interesting about that, I think with every job that you've had, I've really always asked you a lot of questions because I find it really interesting. And I think that I even learned a lot about how the Air Force works on the Inspector General side. I do think it's really interesting. One thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about very often, unless you are an Inspector General. But yeah, I think it's always great that you're open and you talk to me about those too. So, okay.
All right. So what is your current job? Because you haven't worked the whole time that we've been married and while we were serving on active duty, right?
That's right. Yeah. So the first 5 years of your career, we moved 5 times and had 2 babies, and they were both born overseas. So I did not work for the first basically 7 years of your career. And I started sort of doing a lot of volunteer work and then actually got a military spouse fellowship. That was actually how I landed in my current career and what I'm doing now. So I earned my designation as an accredited financial counselor. And so I've held that designation since 2011. And I work in the military family financial readiness space. So military family, veterans. I work actually for a banking trade association. So we represent banks that are located on and off military installations. And yeah, this is a great time this is our our plug.
Brand placement.
Brand placement for my job.
Yes.
But yeah, I think, I've been around this space for a long time, but we run a program that supports veterans and banking. And I think one of the things I've learned through what I do in my daily life is that there's so much about finance that needs to be known. And there's so much that's very specific to the military and to the veteran side. And I think that's kind of what inspired us to, start this.
Yeah. And so that kind of is a great segue into, you talk about helping people and being able to give them tools and resources and leverage partnerships and to better their lives. So let's now ask really quick, you talk about why we started this. So let's talk about this passion project. Can, tell me a little bit more, how did this come to you?
Yeah. So funny. I've always kind of wanted to do a podcast. I thought it would be really fun. And of course we decided to do YouTube and podcast. So we're doing both, but.
And I was a late adopter.
Yeah. I had to maybe convince him a little bit. But I think it was hard when you were on active duty because of some of the positions that you had to. So I totally understand that. And I think this actually gave us a really good excuse to do this. We've talked to so many people in the last almost year that you've been doing transition. And it's interesting because people have come to you and asked you to mentor them. And one specific meeting, you were going to meet with someone who you didn't know very well. And you said, hey, why don't you come along? We're just going to go have a beer. And I was like, you go ahead. And you said, no, come along. It'll be fun. And I said, well, if his wife comes, I'll come, and we can all chat. And then you had mentioned to them that I did, that I was a financial counselor and this was the space I worked in. And they were like, that would be really interesting to learn more. So I think that's kind of where, after we had that conversation with them, we talked a little bit about finance. We talked a little bit about military spouse careers. You and him talked a lot about,
Sure.
the actual transition and things like that. So this is kind of how it came about. And we do know a lot of people that are in this space that are transitioning or have. And then we know that there's a lot of things you've got to know, right? And you like to call them,
well, the unknown, right? So yeah, you don't know what you don't know, and having multiple people help guide you on that path is imperative to success. Yeah, and not just, for you, but, for those of you with families, with children, with spouses, with significant others, with aging parents, as caregivers. There's so many different things that are just not able to be absorbed in just a short career of 20 or 30 or how many years, or even just one tour, so being able to find multiple people to help guide you through whatever your unique situation is, really is this the crux of why we wanted to develop this and have future guests from an incredibly wide swath of capabilities and perspectives and experiences to try to help all of you figure out how you can leverage different help and be that next mentor and so forth, like what we're doing here. So again, this is what this whole thing is all about, is to be able to provide resources and people and, provide a forum to ask all of those questions. And, the beautiful part of, I think, this idea is it's not, designed to be, just a focus on one thing or another. It's not designed to be a focus on, how do you get a job, or how do you leverage VA benefits, or, pick a topic.
Right. Everything you need to know about finance.
Yeah. It's not going to be a one-trick pony.
Right.
And it's just going to be as far as the imagination can take it, because we want to engage our listeners or viewers or whatever shape that this thing takes, and be able to broaden this perspective for everybody.
Yeah.
Whether you wore a uniform or not, it's that big, piece of that transition that affects everybody. And that's what we really want to get to as far as the passion goes.
Yep.
So
absolutely. So
yeah, excellent.
All right. You want to go back to questions? Are you good?
Yeah, let's do questions.
Okay. So I think, you kind of just answered the next question, which is, what is your passion project? But this is something we're going to ask our viewers, or our, not our viewers, our guests also.
Yeah.
And I think, we'll ask our viewers too, what are you passionate about? And just because I've worked in this space for so long, I am passionate that people understand and can leverage all the things at their disposal as far as personal finance goes. Because there is so much that affects military and veterans. And so that is kind of, we answered this question already. This is our passion project. Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay. So this is a good one.
Hmm.
What is something that surprised you about transition?
I think the biggest surprise about transition for me was I have to go back to when I attended TAP, or the Transition Assistance Program. Both the first and the second time that I went through, there was a statistic that was out there that the Department of Labor puts out regarding veteran transition and employment. And it was something like, and I know I'm not going to get it right, but I think it's in the ballpark, something like 80% of all transitioning service members and veterans will end up within their first year or two of post-service employment, go through 2 or 3 jobs. I thought that was highly out of reality. It's not. And I think that, I found it because I thought I had, the right job going into it in the private sector. It didn't fit. So I'm now on my second job post transition. And as mentioned before, I became a civilian 11 and a half months ago. 10 and a half months ago. Public math is not my strong suit.
It's the middle of November, right?
Yeah. So it's 10 full months and a half of the 11th. Yeah. So anyhow, the beginning of January, I started in the private sector, and within 6 months, I was already, moving on to a second position back with the federal government. So, being able to really find yourself in what's next is, again, part of what we're going to explore on this. So I think, again, that statistic I thought was, BS. I'm finding as I'm connecting with my peers and friends that have gone through this stuff, that statistic is pretty dead on. So
it is kind of funny too, because I meet a lot of new people or people that know you, but I haven't seen in a while. And they'll say, oh, how's Ian doing? How's life since retirement? And I'm like, well, he's on his second job. And they go, yeah. Everyone's like bobs their head because this is, a reality. And I think, you did have a mentor tell you, which I thought was brilliant, that when you got out of the military, you were no longer in job jail, mm-hmm. which I think is a really brilliant way to think about it. But it is, I think it's like a little anxiety inducing. You've had this position for so long. You've been very used to the pace of military life that, almost the guarantee of another job. You may not know where it's going to be or what it's.
Well, and somebody's doing it for me.
Right.
Too.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think that is interesting. And that was definitely a, piece we had to navigate together.
For sure. Okay. So that was my surprise. What about you? What was your biggest surprise during this transition?
Yeah, so I hate to totally use this as a surprise, but I actually was surprised that you changed jobs. And this is because I thought you did so much prep work. You were on LinkedIn, you were meeting with people, you were talking to folks, you had really thought about what you wanted to do. And so even though I felt you were like crazy prepared, like I thought this is going to be so easy for you. I mean, it's never totally easy, but I did think you were very prepared, and you had chosen a path, and you were pretty solidly happy about it. And
so I thought.
So you thought, yeah. And then so that is really what surprised me, because only about 3 months into that position, you were not challenged, and I could see it, and I could understand that you needed something to be part of, and you were not getting that with your job. So it did surprise me, because I did not think you were going to turn and find something else that quickly that fit you so well. But man, has it been 9 days since you started your new job. I see that back in you, and I know that's who you are as a person. And so it has been a journey. And I think that's, it's important for us to keep
Yeah.
talking about it. But yeah, I hate to use the same one,
Yeah.
but
But
it is true. It did
Yeah.
surprise me.
Well, and don't be scared. I think that's the whole ultimate message here is don't be scared to find yourself, because it really is, it's your journey. So own it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Okay. So
to you.
well, and yes,
This one's actually kind of funny. So the reason I kept this one in is because we are going to ask our guests this. So how do you perceive your spouse dealt with the transition or felt about the transition?
So how did you feel about,
or how did it affect me, I guess is a better way of saying it.
Yeah, well, I think it goes to when, because I listened to a lot of those that came before me, and I took, my terminal leave and the permissive TDY time for job hunting. And, so ultimately I ended up with about, 4 months of time where I wasn't employed. And my focus was really trying to decompress, take some vacations. We went to go see both of our kids. We became empty nesters that same year, and really just do nothing but job search. So I became a fixture in the house again, after having not teleworked hardly ever.
Even during COVID. Which was weird. Most people were teleworking. He was not.
I was not. I was a first responder and a commanding officer and multiple roles that during that period required me to be present all the time. So, coming home and really starting to, be around the house a lot. And then with that first role that I took post-military service, it was a full-time remote job. So I was in the house, and then it was great because we fell into a nice routine. We were able to schedule lunches together routinely. I was able to, get up and go on walks in the morning, and I was able to cut off work and help make dinner and so forth. And immediately, when the first couple of weeks of me going back to my current position, it's an on-site role. It's got a commute. So a lot of things changed, and I could see that had, while it made me happier to be back in that role, it had an impact on your routine and what you became used to, especially with no kids in the house anymore. I think you felt really
alone.
Yeah, you felt alone, and so that broke my heart. So I saw that transition, without having recognized that and having talked it through, I think would have been a lot more of a lasting impact and effect on ultimately both of us. But I think that's what I noticed. So what do you think that same thing would be for me then, as far as how you saw the effect of the transition impacting me?
Yeah, well, I think, like I said in, my other example, is that you were not fulfilled with that first job. And I think that was partially because, so I've been working from home exclusively since 2015. And so it's been a really long time. And I think
Doing it before it was cool.
That's right, way before it was cool. But I think it was hard for you. That because your first job was basically work from home and you traveled, but other than that, you were here. And I think that, so even the flip side of that, like, even though I was sad that you were gone like 13 hours a day, but again, I could see you were fulfilled. So we did talk about it. And, of course instead of just getting angry with him, which I might have done in my 20s, but I've learned now that I just told him how I was feeling. But you're doing, I think, a good job of making a good mix of that too. But, with anything, and this happened every time we moved too, right? Your routine is completely, like you were saying, it was just, everything was flipped upside down. So we had to fall back into a routine. And, when you're thinking about any kind of transition from PCS to a new job to, military to civilian, all those transitions can be really disruptive.
Yeah, so finding new normal for you and those around you.
Yeah. So I think it just took us a little time, and we've again fallen into routine as well. All right. Okay. So I think you already answered this, but what the one thing about transition that's untrue, which I think you kind of already answered. So
I would say transition, it's easy. It's not.
Yeah.
I think there are I think that the thing that about transition that a lot of folks say, if they say that it was easy for them, I think that is probably a bad descriptor on how prepared they felt they were. And I say that it sounds like I'm saying it's the same thing, but I don't think it is. I think preparedness makes the bumps and the challenges and the unknowns easier to deal with as they manifest. But transition in and of itself is not easy. I don't care how you slice it, because there's so many factors to it. There's the income aspect of it, whether it's retired pay, whether it's, you're having to have to find new employment after, one tour, or you're a mid-career person or whatever, finding, and settling in what that looks like, because, you probably aren't going to have the same tax benefits as you had when you were in uniform.
Oh, taxes. We're going to do a whole episode.
Yeah, exactly. But the medical piece, a lot of people move. And so
there's so many decisions to make.
Yeah. And on top of that, just, accepting the differences between your uniform life and civilian life, the cultural pieces in the new work environment, how, you don't get a board airlines first anymore when they say, hey, active military with your IDs, come on in, so all of these things, it's a shift in how you do all of that, and the decompression side of it, and just being able to drop that rucksack and, understand that life is going to be different. I would say, again, transition is not easy. That's the part that I think is the biggest thing that folks often will say is transition can be easy. I would say transition can be measured in varied degrees of preparedness. So we talked a little bit about what I found to be untrue during transition. I'm going to kind of make this a two-part question for you. So I'm going to throw that same question back to you, but I'm going to put it to you, and how would you frame that for the untrue piece in terms of spouse perspective?
Yeah. So as I was saying, there's a lot to know during transition. And I think this is one of the things that, you're going to hear as a theme that we keep talking about. But I think, especially with spouses in the retired space, when you're getting ready to retire after, a full career in the military, there's a lot to know at that moment. And you mentioned your transition assistance program classes, and they do invite spouses to attend, and there wasn't room in the one that you took on site. But they did offer a hybrid version. So I actually watched from home. I watched some of the VA portion. I watched some of the financial portion, and then I watched the portion that was on the survivor benefit plan. And I think that is one of the things for me. We're actually going to invite a guest on that is brilliant and knows a lot about that. But I think that's one of the things for me, is to just really understand all those benefits, thinking of it as an asset, thinking of the things you built together. And I think the one thing that makes me sad is hearing from spouses that don't fully understand the benefits that are available to them. And I think at the moment of transition, there's a lot of decisions to be made, and some of them are irrevocable.
Yeah.
And SBP is one of them.
So the survivor benefit plan.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the most important things to talk about and really understand fully. So with that's one of my soapbox that we will be having a guest on to speak about, and I'm really excited about that. So.
Okay, great. Well, I think that kind of gets to the core of what we wanted to talk to you about on episode 1, get you an opportunity to really, I think, get to know us a little bit better, and have, maybe a little bit of a perspective on, some of the multitude of things that we want to be able to bring to you, and just share some of our experiences and, open your perspectives up a little bit. So I think to wrap things up, we've got a couple of last minute things. The first thing is a segment we like to call What's in Your Rucksack? And in this segment, we're going to ask each other, what is one item you would carry with you from military life to civilian life? And what's one item you'd leave behind? So over to you first.
All right. This one's easy for me. So When we lived at Moody Air Force Base in South Georgia, you were with a unit that trained and deployed. That was basically your job. You trained, you deployed, you came back. And you had a little rest time before you went and trained again and deployed again. So there was this core group of spouses there that had this connection because of that. And that, I think I will always carry with me as one of those things that was just so unique about that assignment. I'm still friends with most of these ladies to this day because we formed a really special bond. And so things like that, the bonds from military life, I'm going to carry with me in my rucksack in civilian life for sure.
Absolutely.
The thing I'd leave behind is all those deployments and situations. It was reintegration was no joke. It was rough. You spent a year, 13 months, 391 days to be specific, in Korea.
The
second time, yeah, when I was not with you. And so those separations, those can stay. We got like 5 days we got work trips. That's about it. That's all we need.
And sometimes we can travel together on those today, which is great. Okay.
Your turn.
So I guess for me, what would I carry with me from military life to civilian life? Similar to you, you talked about the relationships and things. I would say I would carry with me connections, professional connections and personal connections, and being able to carry those on, for things like this, our passion project, being able to reach out and talk to friends who have experiences. While similar, they can be very different, but being able to broaden that network and leverage that network for those that come behind us. But I think some of the things that I would probably leave behind, honestly, I have found in my current career, I love being able to not have a rank associated with me. While I'm proud of the rank that I attained, and the rank has its definitive purpose in our armed forces, I think being able to shed some of that hierarchy has really shown me a side of federal service that is unburdened by that. And it's a really different perspective that I'm really excited, to live every day. And it's a different way of seeing an organization truly operate in a very flat kind of model, and being able to leverage, really a horizontal network much more so than obviously the structure in the Department of Defense that is a vertical structure, but by necessity. So that's something that I'm glad I've left behind, and it's just, again, a different way to serve, and they each have their own purposes. So again, that's why I think that's a cool part of my next tour.
Yeah. Wow. That's super interesting. I didn't know you were going to answer that way. So.
See, I can still surprise you after all these years.
Like the fact that you piloted a high air balloon, which we found out last night.
Okay, so let's be clear on that. I was given instruction, and I was under tutelage the entire time. So really, I didn't pilot it. I stood there and pointed things where I was told to point them.
It was still something I didn't know about you. All right. Game 2. Now, this one is going to be fun because we're actually not going to reveal this until episode 2 when we have our first guest on the show. And so we are going to share 2 truths and a lie each. So I hope you're ready. And then we're going to reveal which one was the lie on our next episode. So mine are, I have shook the hand of a sitting president. I've had a one-on-one conversation with the Second Lady of the United States, and I have testified before a congressional committee on banking. Which one's the lie?
All right.
Your turn.
Okay. Well, let's see here. How can I top that? I think I'll stay within kind of the leadership realm on this. All right. I have flown with the Vice President of the United States. I have met a king and a queen. And I have sat in a meeting with a prime minister.
Ooh. All right. So join us next time on the next tour with
Ian
and Andia. And we will see you again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
The views, opinions, and advice expressed by our guest on the next tour are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast, Ian, Andia, or any affiliated organizations. While we strive to provide helpful and accurate information, this podcast is for informational purposes only. We encourage listeners to consult with professionals or conduct their own research before making any significant decisions related to military transition or post-service life. The content is intended as guidance and personal perspective, not as official advice.